today for this webinar, all about how to launch and provide ongoing support for a successful TenMarks implementation. My name is Whitney Metzger, and I'll be facilitating today's event. I'm pleased to have some very special guests joining me from various districts across the Midwest. But before we jump into the content of today's webinar, what I'd like to do first is just start with some quick introductions so you know who's here with us. So I am one of our regional directors on the customer success team at TenMarks. Prior to my tenure at TenMarks, I was in the classroom teaching primarily at elementary grades, kindergarten, second, and fifth grade, and then most recently was in an intervention teaching role where I was working with groups of students across the elementary school where I was at. And actually in that position is when I was first introduced to TenMarks and began using it as a resource in my intervention classes, and really got to see the value that it had for students, both in terms of their math knowledge and problem-solving skills, but also I think the big thing that stood out to me was that it really supported the development of their confidence as well. And I had students talking to me about how they loved that TenMarks was right at their, the right level for them, and that helped to build their confidence and so forth when it came to math. So I'm really excited to also allow 3 other wonderful women to introduce themselves and appreciate them taking time to join today.
Hi, I'm Rose Palmer. I'm the elementary math coordinator for the Waukesha School District. And this is my 4th year of being that elementary math coordinator, so I oversee 14 elementary buildings in our district.
Wonderful. Thank you. Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Kallmeyer. I work in Forest Hills Local School District out in the outside of Cincinnati, and I work as the elementary math specialist, and I support grades kindergarten through 6th, and have done that for about the last 5 years.
Fantastic. Thanks. And Kim.
Hi, my name is Kim Klein, and I'm an instructional technology specialist for Granville Public Schools in Granville, Michigan. Prior to being an instructional specialist, I was a teacher in the middle school level, and I actually am not a math specialist. I was a social studies, French, and computer science specialist. But I've been in the role of helping teachers with technology and integrating new programs for about 4 years. So my job works with teachers K-12 in using these new products and figuring out how to make it a part of their curriculum and learning every day.
Wonderful. Thank you all again for joining. If you're just joining, we've just begun introductions for our session today, and now that you know a little bit about who is co-presenting this with me, I want to talk briefly about what you can expect to get out of today's session. So first, I'll do just a very, very brief overview of trends when you're implementing products and technology, and kind of use that as some context setting for the conversation today. Then we'll hear from 3 of our all-star district implementers and hear more about their story about the process of implementing TenMarks in their district and learnings that they've had. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A and opportunity for discussion from those of you on the line. So when it comes to implementing a new product or piece of technology, I think we all recognize that whether it's rolling out iPads or Chromebooks or a product like TenMarks, it's a process that takes time, and it's not really as simple as turning on a switch and all of a sudden you're at the point where everyone is using that new product with fidelity and successfully or creatively integrating it into other things that they're doing. I know it would be nice if it were that simple, but it indeed involves many phases and stages of implementation. So I share this image just to remind all of us that it is a process, and there is a sequence, and really to begin to generate some thinking for those of us listening or calling in here around how to support moving people along this continuum, this kind of ongoing continuum of learning and adoption. So, I think these different phases, the time frame is different for each individual or each district, but there is kind of a scaffolding here and a process that we as implementers need to be thinking about and supporting in the resources, services, and professional development that we offer for those folks we're supporting in that. And then in that implementation process, or in that continuum, there are points where we want to avoid what this image points out as the chasm. So as you all know, or probably have seen, you have those early adopters, those people who are just psyched and embrace really probably anything you throw at them. But as soon as they learn about it, or as soon as they get that initial training or professional development, they sink their teeth in and jump right into using something. And I think that's the point where it's really easy for us to say, great, I've got people who are interested, kind of wipe your hands clean, my work here is done. But I think what's nice about this image is it highlights that there's really a tremendous portion or group yet to be fully on board after any kind of initial training or information that's provided. And when we lag on things like on professional development or that ongoing support, that's indeed where we find these kind of chasms or drop-offs occur in the adoption sequence. So I think what you'll hear today as we start to talk through some of the different implementations that Waukesha, Forest Hills, and Granville have gone through, you'll hear them reflect on ways that they've avoided those drop-offs or slips in that process, the continuum of an implementation. So with that context, I want to really kind of go a little bit more deeply into an actual TenMarks implementation. And so I'll turn things over to Rose to share a bit more about their implementation and rollout of TenMarks in Waukesha and the learnings they've had, and then we'll also hear from Kathy and Kim about that as well. So Rose, it's all you.
All right, thanks, Whitney. All right, so we started having teachers dabble with TenMarks even before our 2014-15 year. A lot of our teachers were using the free version. And so at that point, I was kind of in touch with TenMarks saying, let's look at it more in depth. So last year, the 2014-15 school year, we started a pilot, and which we did with 6 buildings. And just so you know a little bit about Waukesha, we're right outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and so we have a varied population of students. So we picked 6 buildings that would give us a good idea of how TenMarks would work. And so we started with 350 students on that premium, and we started with just seeing how the different buildings, how the students would respond to it. One of the things that we did that first year is we did create lead teachers in each of our buildings so that I could meet with them once a month, and then they could go back out to their buildings. So teachers felt like they had a connection right away in their building versus just down here at central office. One of the other things we did that initial year was we created an Edmodo group with our friends from TenMarks. And so teachers could go in and view webinars. They could do it at their time or, whenever it was convenient for them, and post questions, or they could respond to each other. We found that that was a great way to start that initial implementation piece. As the year went on, then we did PD in the buildings. We have just a few days throughout the year where we can meet with teachers, and so we made sure at that point we had the first time there was a beginning session and an advanced session or an intermediate session. So Whitney came in and did a webinar with our beginning teachers, and I went forward with the intermediate, I think is how we divided it up. And so they felt like they had support. One of the other things that we did when we got to like February, mid-year that year, was we had different teachers go to the buildings and share how they were using TenMarks. And I think that goes right into our challenges and successes, because one of the challenges that some of the teachers had was how they were using it, what was that consistent use, and we found as we were sharing with our lead teachers things that some of the people missed with the program when they heard other lead teachers say, well, I've been using it this way in my classroom. It really built that enthusiasm for the program. So while it was a challenge, we found how to take that challenge and make it a success by having some of those lead teachers go to the other buildings and share how they were using it. I think one of the other successes was that individualization that it provided for our students. It allowed teachers to know where students were at and then make the appropriate lessons and assessments or assignments for them so that our students could have that 24/7 learning opportunity. We have an iPad initiative here in Waukesha, so shortly here, every one of our students will have iPads so they can take it with them throughout the day, and so it just, TenMarks really fit well with that, so that was a huge success along the way. One of the challenges we had was the time always, as with any district, time for meeting with teachers, time for that professional development. So again, when we had teachers go out to buildings, it was built into their scheduled PD time or their PLC time really. And so it was before school or after school so that they could connect with each other. And another challenge was, how do you use those reports? How do we use them to inform our instruction, to move us forward? And so one of the things that we found that we could do is, how we're looking at this year, is improving on the communication of those reports so that across the district they can see how other buildings are doing or how students are performing. One of the other successes I want to say about that first year, I think, was that increased rigor. I was so excited to hear one of our teachers say, when they did the Smarter Balanced exam or the Badger exam here in Wisconsin, the kids actually went up to the teacher and said, you know, that wasn't so bad. It really was like what we did with TenMarks. And so I know it helped to prepare our students for the assessment that they were going to take. And I think the rigor of TenMarks really helped students to be able to tackle those problems that they may not have seen before. As we look at this 2015-16 school year, one of the things that we're doing, we've expanded it now to all 14 of our elementary buildings. We've also included 4 middle schools, and we have one of our high school classrooms using TenMarks. So we've expanded it district-wide. That means roughly we have about 2,500 elementary students on it and 2,500 secondary students. One of the things that we did to ensure that everyone was ready for the implementation this year was to create some summer PD for our teachers. In July, we have a 3-day math institute where we asked Whitney to come in and get the teachers already knowing about the product. We had 6 elementary buildings that were piloting it, but there were many more teachers who had not experienced the program, so we wanted to make sure they had that knowledge ahead of time. Oftentimes for our teachers, we hear that they want to see it early, not the week before school starts. And so it was a great time for Whitney to come in to share what TenMarks looked like, how they could use it in their classrooms. And so I know that was a huge starting point for our teachers. They felt like they were getting it ahead of time. We are going to continue with those lead teachers. Again, when Whitney was talking about that chasm, you know, trying to build that, we found having a go-to person in the buildings really helped get the people who were still kind of on the fence with using it continually in their classroom. They could connect with those teachers, ask how they could help, and what else they might need. And so that just that immediate go-to person was huge. In addition, this year we are continuing with implementation guidelines. So this summer we talked about, how often do you use TenMarks? What does that look like in the classroom? Being we are a one-to-one district, we want to talk about how does technology fit with this. And one of the great parts that I like about TenMarks is the belief that the teacher still is the teacher, and TenMarks is there to help support the teacher's work. And so we wanted to make sure teachers understood how to use that within their classrooms. As I had talked about the way to use those reports, one of the things that we have in our district is a blog. And so on Friday each week, Dan Paczynski and myself, who's our secondary math coordinator, we're going to start to highlight that implementation across our district so that it's always a reminder to use the TenMarks, to celebrate the successes along the way. I think that just helps to build that momentum that is moving forward. And I know one of the things that our teachers are really excited about this year is to use that TenMarks to teach. And so we're really looking at how can we continue to provide support for that as they dive into that new feature of TenMarks. So we're looking forward to a great year. I think we're starting off. Teachers couldn't wait to get their accounts, and they're ready to jump in. And so I think it will be a great year of us using TenMarks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rose. really appreciate you sharing the story, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the others as well. So Kathy, I think we have you up next here to share a bit about Forest Hills.
Okay, thanks, Whitney. I have had a similar journey as Rose with our implementation, but targeting some different grade levels along the way. So you'll hear some commonalities, but also some differences with some of our successes and challenges that we've had. As I mentioned, we're a district located outside of Cincinnati, and originally we targeted our grades 3 through 6 in our implementation, and what that looks like is that we have 6 elementaries in our district and 1 middle school and 2 high schools. And so our focus is, my focus, because I'm the elementary specialist, is on those 6 elementary buildings. Very similar to, as Rose was saying, in 2014-15 was really our first big year of implementation. Before that, in the previous year, 13-14, we also had teachers that were kind of dabbling in the basic version and kept bringing it up at team meetings or district meetings. And so it was a product that we started to look at. As I said, our implementation started in grades 3 through 6, and that was a full purchase of premium. And the reason we started with 3 through 6, obviously, is that those are the big, for elementary, the beginning of the testing years. So we felt that this product, after kind of looking at it through some key teachers that were mentioning it, we found that this would be a product or a nice support for our teachers. I agree with Rose that we also felt that the rigor of it met our needs after we used Park in Ohio last year, and after taking the Park assessment, we too had several students, kind of interesting, we had several students that told their teachers that it didn't seem quite as overbearing as the language arts assessment had, or the ELA assessment. And so we contribute that to the teachers' work with Eureka and trying to implement that. So the other things that we began also in 2014-15, our cycle of professional development, we kind of front-loaded at the beginning of the year with 2 days of professional development, and then we have some days speckled in through the year. And so with Whitney, we tried to do a little bit of that throughout the year by having Whitney either virtually or even setting up webinars where teachers could attend to get some of that PD. They were hungry for it. It's a new product, and we found the same kind of concerns, is that teachers knew what they knew about it and what they dabbled in about it, and really the power came when over the summer we have what we call a summer learning series, which is a 4-day institute. And all kinds of professional development can occur during that time, but we offered a TenMarks session where I facilitated from my end, but Whitney came in virtually. And I had a classroom of about, I don't know, maybe 15 teachers who had signed up for this session. It's a choice time for us. It is not, it sounds like Rose's is more of an institute where all the teachers attend, where ours is a choice. So we had about 15 teachers from across the grade levels, and it was nice. Whitney did some presentation, but also gave some opportunity for question and answer with the teachers. And so we tried to personalize that for them, and I had a lot of nice comments from the teachers afterwards, saying that that was a nice learning shift for them, because they were just using the tool as they used it. So we were in an adoption year last year, and we did adopt a new curriculum, but we found that we wanted to hold on to our TenMarks agreement, and so we went from a 1-year contract with TenMarks into a 3-year implementation and process and contract with them. And so we found that there were successes. We're just now collecting data. We use other data for benchmarking and are seeing some nice results from that. And so we hope that TenMarks continues to support our growth for our teachers and our students. One of the other real positives from a teacher's point of view is what I heard from them was that it gave them an opportunity to look at how you might ask questions about specific standards in a different way. And so, they have what they have as their classroom resource, and then TenMarks had some different ways of thinking about it, or looking at the math that the students were being exposed to. Our biggest challenge this year has been that we've tried to sync using between TenMarks and ourselves, our data, and we are struggling with that. But part of that is our system in Forest Hills and it being correct. So you can see my challenge is having our system updated and correct before we try to do that sync. But that's important to recognize, because if your teachers are not categorized based on the way that TenMarks should have them, so that it syncs, then we have teachers that don't have the right students, and I don't believe that much of this is TenMarks' responsibility. I think it comes back to a district level. So it's really helped us look at our technology piece and implementation of other tools that we have as well. A lesson learned would be to make sure that your administrators are informed and on board and are familiar with TenMarks. We had a session also in late spring of 2015 of the last school year where Whitney did, again, some PD with our administrators, and that was, it was all virtual. They were in their offices, very similar to this, and it was an opportunity for them to learn what kind of data is available to them and how it can support their RTI process in their buildings during PLC. Looking forward into this year, as a district, we have adopted or contracted with TenMarks, like I said, for 3 years, but we've expanded our grade levels into 2nd through 8th grade. We have found that as word of mouth got out, teachers at 2nd and 7th and 8th grade were trying TenMarks and really found it a nice tool as well. So looking forward, our professional development, Whitney's going to come visit us coming up here soon, and we have 2 district professional development days, one in October and one in November, and we're going to offer a variety of sessions because we do have teachers who are brand new to our district that are excuse me, that are teaching grades 2 through 8 and need to learn from a very 101 level, but we have other teachers who are using TenMarks more to personalize learning for their students. So using a roadmap that we've created here in Forest Hills of the use of TenMarks, we're trying to move teachers forward with their needs and just different ways to use TenMarks besides just go sit on the computer for 15 minutes and work on TenMarks. So we're looking at it definitely as a support tool for teachers. Rose had mentioned that they also are using TenMarks Teach, where we have just TenMarks Math, but we're dabbling into the TenMarks Teach product as well to see how that can support our teachers and which teachers would benefit the most from that. So I think that covers me, Whitney.
Well, I have a
Wonderful.
question.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hello? Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Daphne. I am actually at Westerville City Schools in Ohio. And I see on your slide, Kathy, that you talk about a professional growth tool that you created.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk a little bit more about that? That sounds like something would be very interesting to see.
Yeah, it is a tool we call the roadmap, and we actually have it for several different things. We use Schoology with our teachers, and so we've created this roadmap of teachers and their progression through the use of different tools.
Technology.
Yeah, so and not just technology. Some of it's about learning, and some of it's about like our new series that we've adopted and where you are with that series and where we hope it becomes more of a district vision of how that series or that tool should be used. And so in this roadmap, we have 3 sections. One is called Toe in the Water. So those are those, it's not the people, it's really the action, like the early implementation of it. And that's very teacher driven. And then we have Waist High, and then we have All In. And so All In our progression is really that it has become a student-driven tool versus a teacher-driven tool, but the students are working with the teachers, getting to a point where they're using their data to have conferences with the teachers and trying to personalize their learning. We're on the early side of personalization and using blended learning, and so we see TenMarks as a tool that can help us to move forward. Like I said, we're very early in the all in. We have a couple of teachers, a small group that we're calling Fuse, that are really using TenMarks to help to create that personalized learning experience in the math class. So it is something that I've shared with Whitney, and she has permission to share forward.
Oh,
so
great.
if she would like to do that, she certainly could link it in here or post it wherever you find that it would be beneficial, Whitney.
Perfect. Yes, I will definitely I'll share that with you, or I'll figure out a way to post that somewhere more publicly so others can access it as well. But it's a great document for sure. Thanks, Kathy.
And I have coordinated with Whitney on that as well as some of her team to get their feedback to it, because we see how we can use it, but they know the tool so much better that they've given us given input to us as well to help us think of other ways to use it.
Yeah, that we have something similar, but it's more, it's not as much in terms of, it's more in terms of where we are technology-wise. Like, we call it our teaching and learning roadmap, but it's more in terms of where we are technology-wise and, where is it that we want to go. But one of the things that I feel like it's missing is that whole, integration piece, so that as we get digital products like TenMarks, how does that look how does that look fully implemented? And
and this was a lesson learned process for us, because when we first brought in TenMarks, big picture, I wasn't thinking big picture. I was just thinking, like, let's get this working in the classrooms.
Yeah.
And it came to be because principals were asking, like, what is your vision for the use of TenMarks? And for me, in the infancy stages, it was just about, hey, it's a great tool, let's use this instead of some drill and kill practice site. And so that was like my vision, but then it has really blossomed into, because of us learning more about the tool and the data that's available, we've really been able to tweak the roadmap, and really in this case, it's about TenMarks and how we can use TenMarks to make our learning and our teaching so much richer than just, that's a station that you go to for 10 minutes in a rotation. So we really
that's exactly. See, we're kind of at the point before you develop that. I mean, we're at that point now where, okay, we got it. It's a great tool. Teachers are seeing it as a great tool, and now it's administrators asking, well, how can I integrate this into the RTI process? How can how can teachers more fully utilize the data to change or modify their instruction so that they're targeting students where they need to be? And so, I think if you've already kind of gone through that whole thing, it would be something that we could learn from, just to even just take a look at it and kind of help prompt, us as we are, again, kind of doing the same thing. What does it look like if it's fully integrated into our teaching and learning?
I agree, and share back. That's the power of these webinars, I think, from TenMarks and from Whitney, is that it gives us an opportunity to learn from others as well, just like our teachers. I listened to Rose, and she said she had a lead teacher, and I've heard Whitney talk about that as well, and I have not done that, and I feel like that might be our next steps in Forest Hills, is because I do have 6 elementaries and we're implementing the new curriculum. It's time to have somebody help me out in those buildings. So we don't have math coaches or anything like that. I am the sole instructional support. So it would be nice to have some lead teachers who have really embraced TenMarks and the learning and the vision and moving forward. So thanks for that, Rose.
I was going to say the lead teachers have really been helpful just because they use it in their classroom every day. I'm not in a classroom, and so it just means so much more when teachers who are using it can speak to how they're doing it and what are the benefits. It just carries more weight than what I can do.
Yeah, ditto. Yeah, I feel the same.
We had designated lead teachers for each of our buildings. We have 14 elementary buildings, and we tried to do not just one lead teacher per building, but one per grade level per building, and we did targeted 3, 4, and 5. And we had a little bit mixed results, I think, with that. there were some, and Whitney, you know, Brian is one example where they just took to it, and he's been training others, and he's just kind of taken off. But then I think because maybe we had, maybe it's because we had 3 per building, people kind of pointed their finger to, well, you know, that person can do it, or that, you know. I don't think we were clear on the front end in terms of what the expectations were.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're kind of going forward and, you know, doing the lead teacher kind of idea, you know, just from a lesson learned from us, it might be good to make sure that there's, you know, clear expectations in terms of, you know, what they can, you know, what they would do with it after they've used it and things like that. In terms of training, you know, giving training and being the support.
And yeah, and we do not have that factored into our roadmap as far as like who else is helping implement it. It really is a journey for teachers and how they're using the tool to like I said, personalize the learning for their students. So that would be a next step for us as those lead teachers. So, all right, Whitney.
Oh, always more. Right, always more to do adjustments we want to make. So I didn't get that for sure. Well, Kim, I'll turn it over to you to share your story about Granville as well, and then we'll do a little bit of synthesis and additional Q&A towards the end.
Great, thank you. You know, everyone has said so much wonderful stuff that I'm just going to echo. So I'll be considerate of time here, because I could just repeat everything that Rose shared and everything that Kathy shared as a very similar experience in our situation. I love doing this because I've got notes all over my desk right now about road maps and toe in the water and waist high and all in. And, you know, my mind is just firing with what's going to happen next week when we come up for water after the start of the year with the program. So this is an invaluable tool even for us to get together and chit chat about these things. Background on our district, we started piloting the program in actually 13-14. We did a very rigorous look through of 6 different programs. We brought groups together, and we developed rubrics for evaluating the tools, and we're rating them on all sorts of different factors, but the one factor that we were pushing most for was the level of rigor, that whatever tool we use would not just be practice for students, but be something that makes them think, makes them analyze, makes them synthesize, makes them do all those things that we want them to do in the real world with mathematics, and TenMarks definitely won out. So last year we rolled it out to all of our 3rd through 6th grade classrooms. We are a one-to-one district, so we are very blessed in that respect. Our 3rd graders are using iPads in the classroom, and our 4th through 12th graders in our district use Chromebooks. So every student has a device, and every student has their logins. And so last year, to get it rolling, we provided some initial start-of-the-year professional development. And kind of like what Kathy said, it's like in the beginning, you're just trying to think, how do I get this thing going? And for our staff, they're focused on that too. How do I get my students logged in? How do I get around the product? And a lot of our professional development in the beginning were those initial things. Some of my reflection back on that might have been to even back it up and talk more about the product and its purpose, and not skip over some of those initial admin trainings, because I think they would have been very useful in keeping the continuance of the program later in the year. So while all the housekeeping stuff was great, the, you know, why are we doing this part needed to be a little bit stronger to keep things on track with our late adopters. Our innovators, not a problem at all. They took it and they ran with it. And we have so much positive growth and evidence for what they did. And so this year we're kind of pulling the rest of the herd in, and they're really seeing the difference and wanting to be a part of it. I think that there was some benefit for us being a little more relaxed with our staff last year, even though it was provided and it was said, we would like you to use this. We didn't set a minimum expectation. There were a few teachers I actually went to and told them to stop using it so much, if you can believe that. They were just, I think, overwhelming themselves with it, and so we backed it up and set a few goals. But really this year, looking forward, I am setting some basic guidelines with the staff about what's our standard for use and how do we get some valid data with this wonderful tool and integrate it in a natural way into our classroom and instruction. The reason I say last year it was probably a good idea that we did not push so hard is it was our first year of adoption of a new curriculum, and a curriculum that may have been slightly controversial for some of our staff because it removed the textbook from the classroom. And so we were dealing with a lot of personal paradigm shifts at the same time we were implementing TenMarks, and those shifts were all within mathematics. And so not pressing them so hard actually helped us have TenMarks be kind of the light at the end of the day of difficult relearning and reteaching with math. Some of our high flyers really took the lead and were able to point out to other staff that when you get into TenMarks and you start teaching your students and you scaffold the process maybe a little bit, do a little gradual release, they found that there were things that they were missing in their instruction in the past that TenMarks reminded them that they needed to come back to. So they might have gone through as like a preview mode with students to try to show them the types of questions on a particular standard, and then went, oh wait, my kids don't know how to do that. And shifting their mindset, kind of the growth mindset, instead of saying, I don't know how to do that and I quit, which for some of our staff it was that issue, they changed to, I didn't teach that as part of this unit, but now I will. And so they started rebuilding some of their curriculum based on how the students were going to be assessed or learning in TenMarks, so that at the end the students had more success with the questions as well. Some of our initial challenges were the rigor of the program. I had mentioned to a group recently about what was the beginning of the year and the end of the year was a perfect extreme difference. The beginning of the year was a lot of tears, and honestly, tears between staff and students trying to figure out how to actually comprehend some of the questions. The kids were frustrated, and working through that and having that perseverance was definitely worth it. By the end of the year, just as Rose and Kathy both said, we get to our SBAC assessment, which is called the M-STEP in Michigan, and I'm the assessment coordinator, so I'm in the room. It's all technology based in Michigan, and I'm on the ground with the kids, and they looked at me in the test and whispered, this is just like TenMarks, which is fantastic to hear. They felt like they had it. They had no problems answering the questions. But what I thought was more wonderful than that, and I share this regularly, is that I called Whitney and told her, and she said, that's fantastic. Our product isn't aimed to be a test prep tool, but it's great to hear. And for us, that really validated our use of TenMarks too, in that it's about instruction. It's really focused on what the teacher is doing and supporting that and supporting learning first, and the assessment that comes with that is just part of the process in reevaluating how we're teaching. One of our challenges after we got through the where do I log in, how do I build units, what's the difference between last year between a playlist and an assigned curriculum. Once we got through all that, then the teachers were asking that question, like, I don't understand, is this my curriculum, or is this something, am I supposed to do all of my assignments here? So we kind of needed to step back and do some learning about where it fit in, and that's where Whitney really came in and did a great job helping us out. We set up monthly check-ins. We did like a lunch and learn. I have 7 different buildings using the product, and they all have somewhat of a varied lunch schedule, but they fall, you know, around the noon hour. And so we would set up a little bit longer than the hour, and they could come in and out and just grab bits and pieces from a GoToMeeting about what other struggles and what do they need to do and how can they implement this into daily instruction. I also tried to do a meetup once a month and grab a few of our initial adopters to come in and talk about how they're using it, because we find that peer-to-peer conversation and face-to-face conversation and being able to manipulate the tools without the stress of you know, webinar type of things really helped a lot of our teachers. So having that one-to-one personal connection was really popular, and varying the time of day that we offer those things. I also set up a Moodle page for our district and a website where I figure the more points of access, the better, where we put links to all the resources that are already on TenMarks, and we built some custom videos too to help them get through, problems and troubleshooting and things like that, and provided guides for implementation and ideas on how they could ease their students into it, ways that they could use the assessment tools, and how they could build to more success towards the end of the year. So I would say successes were definitely incredible amounts of growth in our students in rigor, which was completely supported visibly through our test score changes and anecdotally by just the students telling us how much they liked the program, how they overcame their challenges, and how they felt they were ready to take on difficult questions in the future. Lessons learned: don't cut short on the professional development with principals for certain. They are my #1 line of defense for supporting the standard of use. And because we didn't really push that with them, the standard was a little varied. We'd have some grade levels. I'll use third grade as an example. A third grade level might have been fearful of the rigor, and instead of assigning third grade assignments, all year assigned second grade assignments because they felt more comfortable with that. This year we're going to try to focus more on how to use the differentiation tools to pull back when we need to, but to try to stay as much on grade level as possible so that we can use those scores and building a better understanding of what our students need. To help do that, we're training the principals better this year. We are building capacity within our buildings, pulling out some lead teachers to help support. Whitney's coming next week to visit us, and we're going to plan a time to meet with the staff then. Reiterating all the wonderful resources that are already on TenMarks for staff to tap into, because we know teachers like to work at midnight, at 11 p.m., and they want to access learning on their schedule. So just pointing back to those resources over and over. And I think mostly for us this year is setting goals throughout the year. For me, sitting down with the administrators and reviewing the reports and reevaluating how this can help them in many different areas of instruction and RTI, and whatever they need to help build forward, and then adjusting how we're going to pursue it for the next 12 weeks, and then implementing that plan. On my end, I plan on this year sending out monthly tips and tricks for staff about how they can gradually build into using this on a regular basis, especially the new tools. We love, love, love all the updates to TenMarks, and that was incredibly popular. At a professional development day a couple weeks ago, we had a room that was, standing room only, bringing chairs in of teachers who just wanted to see the updates and practice using them and get started for the year. So I'm very pleased on where we've been at and where we're going with TenMarks, and are excited for a new year of implementation and a stronger plan, setting standards, and using some of the ideas you guys just gave us for making some roadmaps for learning.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kim. Thanks to all of you for sharing the stories. I myself also have a couple notes about items I want to follow up with each of you about, and I'm sure others who are listening are doing the same. It's nice to have the space to do that kind of idea swapping and idea generation. As we kind of heard these three storylines, I think folks listening probably heard a number of themes. And I'll say that when I talk to people about what makes for a successful implementation with TenMarks, there's not that single recipe that works in every district or every school everywhere. But I do think the more I talk to folks like the three of you and the others, there are some definite themes or elements that kind of bubble up and seem to be commonalities. And even today, hearing some of your stories, some of the things that jumped out at me that you all spoke to was the engaging administrators at the district level and at the building level, sharing expectations, making sure everyone's clear about those and has a plan to support that, both in the rollout but then kind of ongoing adoption and engagement piece. Another thing that I think is a key theme and worth underscoring is the importance of looking for ways for TenMarks to support instructional practices and things that teachers are already doing, rather than it being this kind of additional piece that's tacked on So I know, people talked a little bit about, how could TenMarks serve as a resource for RTI, or how could it blend into some of these other practices, or, our math workshop model, if that's the kind of instructional resource practice that you embrace. So I think that's key, and documents like, what Kathy spoke to with the roadmap, I think helps to actually make that clear for teachers, help them see kind of that process as well. Another big theme I think that's really critical, especially, as you're getting into the swing of things, is tracking usage and identifying trends and knowing, which buildings that are kind of taking it and running it with it, and which individual teachers are doing that, and where the holes and gaps are, and working collaboratively with, either lead teachers or coaches or other administrators to help fill those gaps and fill the knowledge to support teachers. And then, not surprisingly, PD makes it on the list. And I think the big message that I heard from all of you is the importance of ongoing professional development opportunities throughout the year, and not needing to be the full all district PD day, which it can be, and that's fantastic. But I think those additional opportunities for things that are more casual, or even just office hours or Q&A sessions throughout the year is absolutely key. So I know we heard a couple questions throughout, but wanted to just see if there were any final questions. A few questions got included in the chat window to me, so I can call a few of those out if no one else wants to jump in with a specific one of your own. One question that came up was with regard to kind of usage expectations and requirements, and so maybe a couple of you could speak to how you encourage teachers to adhere to the expectations you've set, or if there are any ways that you kind of incentivize teachers to get going or to use TenMarks with the regularity that you expect them to.
I can speak to that. This is Kim. Well, the first thing we're doing is encouraging them to use a benchmark assessment at the beginning of the year to kind of measure where their students are at on the previous year's standards. And that's an exciting tool for teachers. So it kind of, pulls them into the system because they're so interested in finding out at the beginning of the year where their kids are at so they can move forward. And then from there, we are setting a standard this year that with each unit, we're trying to have them assign one assignment per standard that they're working on. And it's a lot easier to do that this year with the tools being changed in TenMarks where they can custom build their units. It makes a lot more sense. So our teachers are using Georgia Math, and they put down their, their math units on one side of their screen, and then they open up TenMarks and just drag in everything and decide where they're going to assign those different assignments. We are asking them to stay at grade level for the initial assignments, but then to feel free to differentiate as needed with students, but that we still need a base level for their grade level and where they're at. And we got some great ideas from other users about using the the practice tool. Why is it leaving my head right now? Help me, Whitney. Fluency.
The jam session?
Jam session, thank you.
Thank you.
Help me, yeah. The jam sessions, because they're more fluency. They're not so much text and analysis. They're more, how do you do this problem? To use those to do some of the prerequisite things that they need before they get to the unit, so that they're not misused as the tool for the unit. That we want them to be thinking and analyzing during the actual unit process. So we're kind of putting that there, and then I'm following up by looking at usage and sending those reports to their administrators just to foster casual conversations about it when they see each other or at lunchtime. Hey, how are you using this? Have you been able to get in? What's going on in the beginning of the year? And then it will give a little more, noticing. I've noticed that you've used TenMarks 5 times in the last 12 weeks. What have you done? How can we increase the use of that? And really looking at the data in there too, because I'm finding it's really important to find out how many students in the reports on the admin side actually completed that work and make any kind of useful conversation. Because you can say, oh, 100% of the kids are achieving on that standard, but when you look deeper, only 2 kids actually took an assessment on that standard, so the numbers aren't as impressive as the percentages. So to take time and really teach my administrators how to have those conversations with the teachers about usage and giving them some encouraging ideas for what they can do. But definitely setting a standard and asking people not to negotiate on that as much.
Yeah, we also, I mean, I think that was, you had mentioned about doing the previous grade level assessment. That's exactly what we did too. And what we're finding, the numbers aren't as good as what we obviously want them to be. But it gives us, since this is the first year we've done that with TenMarks, it's really given us a good starting place. So, I mean, I think with given the results that we have right now, and really being able to focus and use TenMarks as we move forward, I think it's gonna really give us some good data in terms of where we are now versus hopefully where we'll be next year and the following year. Great information.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm looking at the clock here and realizing we're at the top of the hour and know that people have to drop off for other meetings and so forth. So what I would love to do if people are interested is to offer opportunities like this throughout the year where those who are available from districts throughout our region to log in, and it may not need to be kind of as formal as this one was, but more just an opportunity to swap ideas at various points in the year and say, here's where we're at, or we're about to do mid-year testing, and just discuss how people are implementing a particular idea or reacting to it and supporting teachers. So this is to the extent that it's helpful or of interest, we can definitely continue to gather as a group and build a little bit of a regional dialogue about some of these topics. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen in and share stories, ask questions, and so forth. I want to leave with just a reminder about the resources on our help desk. I heard a couple people mention them throughout, but there is a plethora of plethora of resources there that we're constantly adding to. And if you can't find something there that you're looking for, I would say that would be a great opportunity to reach out to me, because it might mean we have a new resource to build. Please continue to share your feedback about the product. Many of you are very good about doing this, but please keep capturing it, what you're hearing from teachers, things they love, ideas they have for things that would make it even better. That is what our product team relies on to make the changes that we do, and it's my role to help to advocate for those changes. So please continue to share that feedback and reach out with questions that you have for me moving forward. And I just really appreciate everyone's time today and joining and listening in. So thank you all so much, and have a great evening.
And I'm hoping that this is okay, but I would even like to, contact you guys directly through email and just, questions and sharing learnings and things like that more on an ongoing basis. Is that something that would be okay to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. This is Kathy, because Westerville is not too far from Cincinnati, so it would be nice to connect. And it sounds like the districts that have spoken so far on the webinar, we're kind of on the same path. So it would be really nice to see where people are, as we move forward in blended learning or personalized learning, and to see what other districts are doing to use TenMarks to move that forward. So yeah, I'd love that. Maybe we can do that through Whitney, if that would be all right. If you want to share that out to each of us, that would be awesome.
I definitely will. I love hearing that. It makes me smile. And I'm hopeful. I know great things will come from those continued conversations. So it would absolutely be my pleasure to introduce you all via email.
Okay, thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, Whitney,
All right,
for
thanks,
setting this
everyone.
up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.